All right, good afternoon. It is January 23rd, 2025, the year of our Lord. Good afternoon. I hope you are all doing well. Welcome to Scouching Live. I, of course, am your host, Will. I am the guy who runs this place, and let's party for an afternoon. It's
Mhm.
the weather is finally breaking. It's warming up a little bit here. It's been absolutely frigid in southern Ontario for quite a while, and I'm tired of it. I'm sick and tired
For
of it.
all of 5 days,
It's
it's below
5 days too many,
been below -10 and
It has been terrible.
la
And of course, I was dog sitting a couple of those days, so
oh,
walking the dog in this weather has been horrific. But, the dog's nice and the dog likes me and it's been fun, except for the part where she gets salt in her paws and
ooh,
when she's ready to come home, she just lays in the snow in someone's yard and just holds her paws in the air. So you kind of have to hold her paws and shake them out a little bit, and then she just sprints home every single
mhm.
time. It's crazy. Anyway, welcome to the show. Of course, AJ Jadero's here with me, ready to
Yes,
have
yes.
fun. AJ, how are you feeling this morning,
Well,
afternoon,
afternoon
whatever it
now.
is? Yeah,
You know
whatever.
what? The Leafs may have lost, okay, which is big sad, but my ultimate boy, Adam Fantilli. Shorthanded
Yeah,
goal, empty net goal. Is the other one even strength? It probably was even strength. I think it was.
I'm not sure. I didn't watch the game,
Anyways,
but
a hat trick. A hat trick for
yeah,
my boy. It's good for the brand, even if it hurts my own
it
team.
is. Yeah,
Adam Fantilli should have gone first overall. That's my takeaway.
done. That's it. Yeah. I mean, to do that in your home city is sick. Your parents are there. That clip of the mom with her hat in hand, ready to
Awesome.
throw it on,
Awesome.
yeah, you get your hat trick, your first career hat trick on an empty netter, but at least it gave your parents time to prepare in advance and got time for cameras to pan over to them. And you got that shot of your mom with hat in hand, ready to toss it. Pretty good toss too, I
Oh,
must
they
say.
they had that shot lined up.
That's true. Yeah, they probably had a camera trained on them all night.
No. As soon as he got on the ice, it would have been all right. Camera 4, pan to the Fantilli family. That's just the way it goes.
Fam Tilly. Get to Fam Tilly shot. There,
Absolutely, absolutely.
one for you if you're in the broadcast truck. Fam Tilly, ready Fantilli or whatever they say, the producer says. Anyway, yeah, big night. Big night for Mr. Fantilli. Feeling pretty good. How is he doing this season anyway? Because we took a look at him not so long ago and we're like, yeah, this guy's gross. Um, I mean, a hat trick definitely helps, but
Yep, I'm sure he's doing great.
I mean, Columbus is doing pretty fine,
Hmm.
right? This season. Yeah, he's on pace for a 50-point season ish. Um,
I'm sure that point total will go up too, because now I think he's playing like he's their top line center now, like
yeah,
fully
he's been playing
undisputed.
18 to 20 minutes a night, maybe a little more.
I think that's gonna go up. I think that's gonna go up because
Yeah.
he is effing sick. He is so good, so good.
Well, yeah, they're in a playoff spot. It's close.
And where's Connor
Odd-
Bedard? Crying. Not being Adam Fantilli. Where's Leo Carlson? Not close to where Adam Fantilli's team is in the
uh,
standings. I rest my case.
yeah. Hey, the kids are all right in Columbus. They've got a decently young group of guys that are stepping up and doing pretty
And Gavin
well. And
Brindley's on the
so
way. Gavin Brindley's on the way.
yeah, the best one of all of them isn't even there yet, so
Oh, not the best one of all of them, but maybe the second best. Maybe the second.
he's pretty good.
I love
But
him.
anyway, welcome to the show. Without further ado, we're going to have some fun today. It is going to be largely in the last couple of days been an absolute load of new rankings to dig through.
Oh
So
yeah.
we thought it would be prudent to go through them as well as provide a quick update on where I am at least in the first round, just so you guys have a bit of a barometer of like the angle that I'm coming from on a lot of this. So I believe AJ has prepared graphics. I just have to pull up my own list here.
Yep.
So we're gonna do it 10 at a time, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So we're gonna just take a quick look at the top 10 for me as it is right
Or
now.
it's 12. I think it's 12, 10, 10.
12. Okay, so
Because it
12,
goes
10, 10.
32 to 21, the way it
Yeah.
did last time, then 20 to 11, and then 10 to 1.
Right. Okay. So largely not much has
Oh, you're lagging.
Yes?
You're lagging a bit.
Oh, weird. Maybe my internet's gonna die. I don't know. It seems to be a little sketchy. Are we doing any better?
Yeah, we're doing a little better now.
All right.
If
All right.
if
Well,
if I get to hijack the show at some point,
yeah.
stand by with us, people.
Yeah,
But he
we'll
appears
get
to be
there.
back now.
Yeah, okay. So you haven't run the graphics, I don't
No, I
think.
haven't.
So okay, so first 12 are up first. Not a ton has changed a whole lot. Ben Kindle is part of this group now in the top 12, but
sorry, I ran it backwards. Oh, and now he's gone. Excellent. Well, this is a fun stream. But here's Will's list for all of you people at the time. And hopefully we'll get Will back on before the end of the graphic here. So he's had some movement happen.
okay.
Oh, is he back
there
now?
we are. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't say my internet is dying, but
either way, this
we'll
is
try.
where he's at
The show must go.
currently.
The show must go on. Yes, this is where we're at. But yeah, largely things have changed a little bit for quite a few. I don't know what's happened, AJ. Where are we at here?
I actually cannot hear Will. I can see that he's
Oh.
here, but I cannot hear him. So we're having a great stream at the moment. Can everybody else hear Will, or just me so far?
This is great. Oh.
This is going to be a very fun show. Will, can you hear me? If you can,
yes.
nod. Okay, so Will can hear
hilarious.
me. That's excellent.
I can hear AJ, and I hear myself on the stream.
I cannot.
So it's AJ who can't hear me.
No, I can't hear you at all. Did you want? Can everybody else hear Will? Okay, everybody else can hear Will. Fantastic.
It's all AJ's
and I
fault.
can't.
Yeah.
Here,
so
I'll just hop into Discord quickly so we can hear each other, if that's cool.
All right. We'll figure it out.
Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. We can run the graphic again. You know, I don't know what the hell's going on, but weird technical glitches. Typical, you know. This is the world we live in 2025. Broadband internet doesn't work properly. But anyway, okay, so here's what we're gonna do.
Okay, can you hear me now, Will? Or
yes.
Can I hear you? Can you try?
I can hear you now, correct? And you can hear me.
I'm not hearing you.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh, because one moment.
Nothing, man. Can't hear you at all.
How about that?
Yeah, now I can hear you through Discord.
Okay. Cool.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Okay, I hear you twice, but that's okay. We can make that work. Okay,
Sorry
maybe
about
that'll
that.
be better. Okay. We're back.
Cool.
Right?
Yep, we're back.
We got it. Okay. Let's run the graphic again. Let's start that over.
Okay.
And we'll do this again. And Brian, no, I didn't have him muted, but somehow my internet dropped, and when I came back, AJ couldn't hear me, but I could hear me, and I could hear myself on the stream, and AJ was on the stream, and everything's all crazy. So I blame the producer, DelayJ.
Wow,
but
thanks.
Anyway,
by the way, it goes. I have it backwards, so it goes bottom to top.
Oh, okay. So bottom to top then.
Okay.
So we'll run it again. I'm assuming you haven't run it. But yeah, so not a ton has really changed all that much. There are some new additions for me. Gustav Hillstrom is probably the most notable example at the end of the first round. I didn't have him ranked in December, but I've come to really, really like him. A few guys have moved down a little bit. So Cameron Schmidt has moved down quite a bit, which we can talk about. A guy, Michael Sverchek, is way up from my second round into my first round. I've seen him 3 times in the last month, and he's been phenomenal every single time. And so maybe I'm overcorrecting on him, but in that group, I mean, he's been quite the standout. And I had a little hockey watching date with Sam McGillicuddy last night, and he actually really enjoyed him too. So I'm not alone on that island. And we'll see where that goes. But other than that, I mean, Blake Fiddler is up quite a bit for me. Jake O'Brien has moved up quite a bit. Braden Coots has moved up quite a bit. Ben Kindle is up a little bit more than he was. I'm a little bit more hesitant on him than I was like a month ago, but still, I think other guys have just moved down more often than anything. So that is something to think about, at least for me. But at the very top end, the only thing that has really shifted is Victor Eklund and Porter Martone have swapped spots. So it's no disrespect to Porter Martone, but Victor Eklund has been fantastic every single time I've watched him. I know he went through a bit of a scoring slump. I don't really care. The overall results and the speed of his game and the skill and the tenacity, it's all fantastic with him. So there's lots and lots to love about a guy like Victor Eklund. Really, really happy with how he's played. Martone, I haven't actually seen Martone in a little while, but Martone is just a guy I'm still trying to put my finger on exactly the projection on him. I'm starting to wonder, he's a guy where I still feel like you want him on your team. You really, really love to have a guy like Martone around, and really love to have him just, you know, help you win. And I think he does that. But I do think that there is a bit of a more of a limitation with him long term rather than compared to the other guys, basically, right? So Schaefer, Misa, Haggins, I think are both all just fantastic players. Um, and I think Martone is just an extremely good sort of B option to that. And I think Eklund is the same way. The other guys in that tier for me, though, Jackson Smith, Cullen Potter, and Carter Bear. Like, I watched another game of Cullen Potter last night with Sam, and he was still excellent. There was nothing really to complain about with him. And it was really, really good, like a really good offensive performance. And it still seems to me like he's a guy who, on a better, on not maybe, I mean, Arizona State's not bad, but on a better team with, players who can keep up and are as quick as he is, or go to the net at speed with him. Like, he's often first guy in the offensive zone with the puck, has to stop up, circle back, take his time. But if he can get more opportunities on the rush and get more opportunities to hold on to the puck and play with guys in a quicker way in the offensive zone, I think he would score a lot more. In that game, he sent like 3 or 4 clean passes through the crease. That's just the guy on the receiving end had his stick tied up or whatever, but very, very close to a pretty easy tap in goal. So that's a guy who I've really, really liked. So for me, at the end of the day, not a whole lot has really changed. I will also say, like, for me, the range from 9 through the end of the first round pretty much is really, really close, right? Like, if you want to have a disagreement with me about a guy like Cameron Schmidt or Caleb Desnoyers or Justin Carbonneau or Bill Zonin, and you really think that those players could be a number 9, 10, 11, 12 pick, we can have that discussion. Honestly, I think that there's ways you can have that discussion, because it kind of depends on what you like, who you vibe with, who brings what to the game that you value or what you don't value, or what you'll elevate and what you might not. It's really just an eye of the beholder thing for me. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when it comes to doing this kind of thing, is that there are multiple ways of thinking about these things. But for me, there's a lot of very interesting tools and smarts and potential with the guys that I have at the top of that tier, and Kindle and Lakovic and Coots. And I mean, McQueen is a bit of a wild card for me right now, but he should be back relatively soon, I believe. So we'll see how that goes. But like O'Brien and Nilsson, like, all just really smart pivots up the middle of the ice who can move the puck and also have a lot of pace in their game. But you could also make the argument that this is also the case with a guy like Caleb Desnoyers a little further down the lineup. But for me, a guy like Desnoyers, I think, is a lot of a safer projection as like a 3C on an NHL team, like a good one. Really smart puck mover, really smart playmaker, but just maybe not the 200-foot high skill, high intensity, NHL pace level guy that you can play 20 minutes a night. Whereas I feel like there are other guys that might have upside that's a little bit maybe less certain, but the upside might be there. But they're all really good players, and I think that in this range of the draft, like, I don't think any of them are like elite level, game changing talents, but I think they could be really good complementary talents on any NHL team that can do a variety of different things. So, I actually have warmed up to this draft class a little bit over the last 2 months, I'd say. You're watching guys get their legs under them. Certain players, I would say, have improved a lot to my eye over the year. Jake O'Brien, Ben Kindle is another one. Carter Bear, I think, has looked better in the games I've seen him. Cullen Potter as well. Hell, Michael Misa, compared to what I remember from early in the year and in last season, is just a different universe. I mean, I think he's been phenomenal. Um, but yeah, I mean, and the one. Okay, so I guess on that note, then we can sort of go into some of the big sort of movement in the first round for me that there was.
Let's do it.
And I think there's a few examples. So the first one obviously is Michael Sverchek moving all the way up to like the 19th slot. That might be a little high, but I've seen him a few times because I want to make sure there. But that's a guy who I think, now that he's in the SHL, and I watched a couple of games of him in the SHL, and I've tracked a couple of games of him at the junior level. I mean, there's so much that he brings to the table that I think that in a couple of years, if for me, a lot of what maybe needs to be worked on is shot selection and the ability to get pucks off quickly on the rush and all of those things, because he can be a little bit cross the blue line, put it on net softly, and just kind of follow up from there type player. But if he can sort of learn how to be a little more confident and like really sort of drive into the offensive zone with speed, especially at the pro level, I think he could be amazing. But his two-way intensity and the speed on his feet, like he covers ice like very few other guys in this draft for me. On the back check, especially. And for me, I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he is a guy where it almost doesn't matter. Like he plays smart hockey as well. Quick stick checks, quick feet. He's off like a shot when he gets possession of the puck. There's a lot of things that he does that I think are really, 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 really high end. That, it's one of those guys where every single time he steps on the ice, generally, there's something where you can go, that was a really positive moment. That was a really positive play that was done in a way that is pretty high end. So I've really liked him. I'm sure he won't end up this high, but again, that range for me is extremely close. And comparing him to guys like Carbonneau or Reshny or Schmidt, I think that there's a little bit less in terms of concern. He's an 07, and those guys are well, at least Carbonneau is an 06, and guys like Van Sagi and Malcolm Spencer, all those sixes. And I think Sverchek, just long term, you leave him in Sweden and see what he does, or maybe he wants to come to Canada and play in the CHL. I don't know, but I've thought at the SHL it's been a place where he could do well long term. Good speed in his game, good tenacity, aggressive, not selfish, just a lot to like. And so we'll see where that goes. The other one, Cameron Schmidt has dropped quite a bit for me. And I mean, look, I think someone asked it in the chat about like a boomer bust player outside of the top 10. I mean, I think that pretty easily is Cameron Schmidt. So Cameron Schmidt I love him, right? Like I watch him play, and the only guy in this draft class in the CHL who has more goals in my ranking is Michael Misa. And so that has to be at least considered a little bit. But I do look at him and I go, like, he's got to be very close to like perfect in order to make his play style work in the NHL, right? Like I think he needs a little bit of refinement in terms of, I think the shot selection thing is a little bit overstated, honestly, when you really look at his WHL footage. I think he does really try at least to push into more scoring areas and tries to push into those more difficult spots. But he is really small, and he is really like, the thing is with a lot of guys that size is like the actual footprint on the ice that he takes up is really small. So it means that if you're sending breakout passes to him, they've got to be pinpoint accurate to be even like in his realm of influence. And he's got to be able to corral those pucks and be able to anticipate oncoming pressure and get through it really effectively. And I feel like that's kind of hit or miss at this level right now at 5-on-5, but it's really hard for me to put him as low as a place like Central Scouting has him. Like, I get the feeling that there's a pretty big chance he goes outside the first round, but I think it doesn't take very long for him to be the most just purely talented offensive finisher out there. And the skill level and the intensity level, like, again, we watched a game of him last night and he wasn't bad by any means. But there were moments where both of us, Sam and I, both kind of just went, holy crap, like you don't see many guys pulling off moves like what Schmidt does from time to time. But at the end of the day, it's a really high bar, and it's a bit of a risky call, I think. But I would not be surprised if in 5 years we look back and go, how did anybody not have Cameron Schmidt in their top 10? Because he's scoring 30 goals in the NHL, you know,
Hey now, Craig
30,
Button. Don't
yeah, of
count out
course.
Craig Button.
Of course, of course. And you know what? Like the thing about Cameron Schmidt that I love is that I do think there's a world where he kind of regresses back to a third line guy. Like if you think creatively, like if you're a coach and you are willing to sort of think outside the box, like he can mix it up. He's physical, he's intense, he's got a lot going for him that a lot of people categorize small players as not having. And I remember watching him at the Top Prospect Series against the USNTDP, where he was just in their face all the time and messing around with people's brains and really trying to get in their head, which is great. But again, it's like the physicality and the speed of the NHL and how little room he takes up on the ice and how I've seen him kind of get bumped out of offensive zone cycles and removed from play. But if you can find him in the offensive zone and he's got a little bit of room to think and make a play, he can be lights out. So for me, it's just a matter of like risk, and I just it's a weird one where it's like the question of how much value is he going to bring in the NHL, I think is a big question mark. But I think he, on the right team in the right scenario, I think he could find a role of some kind, right? Second power play unit, maybe first power play unit, but like third line, bump and grind, jerk winger who's a real pain in the butt. And I think that's totally fine. But for me, other guys I think just have passed him a little bit because I think there's a little bit more certainty. Like, and I'll move on after him after this on him. But like, a thing that Sam and I like to do, especially me, is like this thought experiment of like 10 one-on-one chances, right? If you put Cameron Schmidt one-on-one against a guy like Radim Mertka, right? Who's going to win that battle, right? If Cameron Schmidt has to score on Radim Mertka 10 attempts, how many times does he score and how many times does Mertka box him out or block him out or prevent a shot from happening? And with Mertka's, like, it was actually a game against Seattle, and Mertka stood next to Schmidt at one point in open ice. And I mean, you know me, I'm not all about sort of how big a player is, but Radim Mertka looked like a tree next. I mean, he was wearing green, right? The Thunderbirds colors, but like he would look like a tree next to, like, those pictures of people at the redwood forests in California where they're standing next to the trees. He was the person in the photograph and Mertka was the tree. Like, it was not even like, he's huge. And I just feel like the zone of influence and the stick checking ability and the reach that a guy like Mertka has, I mean, it kind of limits Schmidt's abilities a little bit. And so I don't know. It's a tough call. If you had to make me choose him somewhere in the first round, I don't know where I would do it. It's a really, really tough call. And I think a lot of teams are going to go, if there's a chance that he struggles to score in the NHL, is he going to find a job? And if the answer to that to some people is no, then he's going to slip a little bit, because that's not the kind of risk NHL teams are looking for. But I think he could be an interesting one for whoever picks him up. And the last one that I did want to bring up, I mean, Ben Keevan moved up quite a bit, but that's only because I thought he's just brings a lot of really, really good, smart offensive traits. And I thought at the All-American game, he was quite good. But Gustav Hillstrom is the other guy that I've really liked. And I've watched him in the SHL pretty much exclusively this year. He's a natural center, but he's playing the wing there. But just a really smart and effective hockey player, positions himself really well, gets himself to spots really quickly. Just does a really good job of finding space, exploiting opponents and anticipating what they're going to do. He's physical. He can be a really, just, you watch him and at the SHL level, and I think you can just go, yeah, this guy is a really good hockey player. Like, he goes out there and just eats minutes and he can score, right? Like, once in a while you see some stuff out of him at that level already. where you can kind of see some really good talent there, like who goes to the net. Stuff that in the NHL works, right? It may not be the most exciting thing in the world, but for a second round pick and you get a bottom six center who can sort of keep it simple but play at a strong enough pace that you could see it working in the NHL, I think you could do a lot worse. But yeah, so that just about does it. I mean, outside of my first round, there's been some movement as well. But in general, I mean, really the big one has been Sverchek lately, and Cameron Schmidt dropping a little bit. But in general, I mean, a lot of guys I think have improved over the course of the season, and I think there's a lot to chew on, at least from here. I also tracked a game of Simon Wang in Oshawa, and that was a lot of fun. He's certainly very big, and he can certainly skate. That's it, and that's a fascinating hockey player. I have no idea what's going to happen with that guy, but that's going to be a good time. But let's move over.
Coolio.
Yeah, what?
No, I said Coolio. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So how do you compare to Bob McKenzie's list? Why don't we do that?
So Bob McKenzie, I mean, the first thing that jumps out is that NHL scouts seem to really still be in favor of Anton Frondell. And I genuinely don't really have a counter to that. Like, I don't know. I've said this a few times, but like I've seen Frondell a bunch this year and I still don't know what to think about him. But I think that there's a lot of guys in this year's draft where they go out and they're smart and they're physical enough and they check a lot of the boxes for NHL teams. And I think that the common sentiment is really negative on this class in general. And so NHL teams are just sort of defaulting to like, if we get a guy out of this, then great, and Frondell was great last year, had a bit of a tough go this season injury wise, but if he didn't have that, where would he be? And I think that 5 is, I mean, I feel like you don't take that kind of a risk at 5th overall, especially based on what I've seen of him this year, but he's not bad. And if someone takes him top 10, I would not be surprised in the slightest. Because I think he brings a lot of really good combinations of smarts and skill, especially under pressure, that I think translate pretty well.
So quickly with Frondell,
yeah,
it's basically like, having read it a little bit, they're basically giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Injuries,
that's what it sounds like.
And he played great last year is what the little blurb says. So they feel like he's been better, and we'll see how that gets reflected in future rankings.
Yeah. Desnoyers and McQueen at 6 and 7. I mean, I get it. I understand it. I disagree, but they're smart. They're pretty physical, I suppose. I think McQueen has more upside than Desnoyers, and I have him higher. I just can't really comment too much because I want to see him after he comes back from injury. Jake O'Brien at 9 again. It's like, this is the draft of like, can you find a guy who is smart, can move the puck decently well, and at least tread water in the NHL, you think? Like, it just seems like that. I mean, I really like all these players, right? McQueen, Desnoyers, Frondell, even McQueen to a certain extent. Like, I've enjoyed watching these guys in terms of like projecting them to the NHL. But, for me, it's like, I think there are guys I think you could swing higher on who play more of a modern style of play that could work if you sort of think a little bit more. Yeah, we kind of went over a little bit. We kind of went over the top 10, I suppose. Logan Hensler at 11. I'm going to take another look at him as soon as I can because I haven't seen that, but he's always been a good player. But 11, I think that might also be based on his play last year, but I'm going to take another look at him. But the second game I did see of him was better than the first. But again, like, a lot of this is largely like, I either agree with it and sort of see them in the same soup of players, or I see why NHL teams would be interested in them, right? Like Kayshawn Aitchison, I should say. I mean, I personally haven't really been the biggest fan, but he's gonna he's gonna be a guy NHL teams are gonna want, and he's gonna be a guy they want to play, and it's all gonna he fits so many roles, or at least he fits a role so well that I think it's going to be really hard. It's just for me, a guy like that, I wouldn't draft in at the top 20 area, but I see the appeal.
Quickly, if I
Uh,
may interject,
yeah, yep,
because you mentioned Kashawn Aitchison,
yeah.
I think we're gonna have a game tape for him out tomorrow.
Ah, very cool.
So
Yeah,
be on the lookout for that. Might be Saturday, but most likely tomorrow.
yeah.
For all you wonderful people, we're resuming the series, starting with Kashawn Aitchison because we filmed that in December,
We have some
and
good ones too coming.
Matthew Schaefer is the
Sure.
one after that.
Yep.
And it'll make the headline of Bob McKenzie's list about him being humbled to be the number 1 overall pick look dumb. But it's still he says something really awesome, and I love it. So excited for him to show up and be be on the series.
Yeah, HSN tomorrow. Check it out. Ivan Ryabkin, I am a little surprised, but I mean, he has been more of a dirtbag lately in the USHL, so maybe that's what people are drawn to now, like a bottom 6 energy guy. Because I don't know if I would use a pick that high on him. But I don't know. I personally have him quite a lot lower. Um, Jack Nesbitt in the first round is also very confusing to me, but he's big, and I guess NHL teams are going, if you get a third or fourth line center, at 25th overall, you've done okay. I just feel like Jack Nesbitt is the type of guy who's like a bottom 6 guy he plays like an NHL bottom sixer, but in the OHL, which I feel like is always a really sort of like you're kind of overshooting the potential there, but he is big. I've seen some moments of skill of him. He's listed at 185 pounds and 6'4", so that's tons of room to develop. Again, I'm just the type of person who likes to bet on upside and bet on guys that move the needle more rather than insulators and guys who might be able to sort of shield your defenseman. But it just seems a little bit high to me. And I saw a question. I mean, the rest of it, I think I understand. I mean, I like Ben Kindle more, but I understand that people are, skeptical of the size and his physical game isn't really there. But I mean, I think the point where I left off was just finishing up with at least Bob McKenzie's first round here.
Yep.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit about Simon Wong because I also think we saw a comment about him being just a 6'6" guy who can really skate. I mean, look, again, I think the public perception from scouts is that this draft is not very good. And so it's a weird, I think, double standard where it's like, it's worth taking a risk on X. But when I come around and I go, well, I think we should maybe take a risk on Y, it's like, well, no, not that. We want to take a risk on this. Like Simon Wong, I actually tracked a game of his yesterday. He was okay. Um, I would say that it is extremely rare in my experience to find a guy that big who skates that well. But I think that it's like he's a guy where you're going to need to take your time, and I think he's a long way away. Like I think he's a guy who, with regards to his skill level, um his vision on the ice, like his passing play, it's all pretty rough from time to time. And like the finer points, like under pressure, like quick changes of direction and everything, that I think that part of skating in the game is a bit of a work in progress. But I mean, look, if you want to draft a guy at 30, like it's not that much higher than where I have him, right? Like I have him in the 40s. Like if you want to just sort of throw a dart at the wall on on a 6'6" plus guy who can skate like very few other 6'6" guys, who may be rough around the edges, but you go, we'll send them to college for a couple of years and see where he's at. Fair enough. Personally, I think I have other players like that I would probably put my money on that are somewhat similar to him, but he hasn't been bad, right? Like he's a solid, interesting player.
But Will, can you teach
Yes.
being that big?
Well, no, you can't. I mean,
Therefore,
there is a level of
hold
truth,
on. Therefore, you're wrong. Okay.
Probably, but whatever. I'm okay with it. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, obviously, guys like Charlie Treadaway and Jacobis Wozniak and All those guys really haven't done much for me this year. Nathan Beam as well, I don't think has really done much for me. He's really slowed down production wise, and I just haven't been enamored with his game, at least not top 40 level. But I mean, there are names interspersed in here that I do like. I'm starting to think that maybe Adam Banak, there's been a bit of an overcorrection. I thought he was really good at the All-American game. Cole McKinney is a player who I didn't have ranked initially, but now I do, and I think that there's an interesting player there. But again, like maybe a limited ceiling, but I think he's projectable. But yeah, I mean, past a certain point in this draft, like I can go down the list on Bob's list and go, I like this guy more, and I like this guy more, and I like this guy more. But overall, it's kind of it is what it is, right? Like I like Quinn Beauchene, I like Jimmy Lombardi, I like Václav Nestrasil potentially, and I think there's something there. I like Riker Lee, like all these guys, I think are good swings to take.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, it's not the best, most exciting draft class, but I do think that the top end is really interesting, especially at the tippy top. And I think Bob McKenzie sort of outlines that. And generally, with Bob McKenzie's list, you can kind of guess who's going to go where. It's usually the most accurate to the actual NHL draft.
Yes, which leads me to something.
Yes.
So how does this now change your watch list in terms of where you're targeting guys? Because for those who don't know, Will drafts with the Leafs picks. He's been doing that since what, 2016, 2015?
15, yeah.
2015. So
yeah.
Will takes all the picks the Leafs have and puts his name to guys at that slot.
Yeah.
And so how does this change that? We're about to find out. So Will, take it away.
Well, I would say that since right now, since Michael Sverchek isn't even on this list, that's probably the guy right now that I'd jump at. But Pyotr Andrianov, the goaltender, honestly might be the guy for me. I think at that point,
Mm-hmm.
because he's ranked 71st here, if he's a late second round pick, that's around where the first pick is, and I think that could be an option. And there are literally no goalies on the team right now that qualify in my tracker as a goaltender. So, it could be nice to have one or two, and I really like Andrianov. I think he's been really, really good this year. Outside of that, like, I think I have no idea. Like, there's a third, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh rounder. Like, I think Will Bell was ranked here. Was he? Yeah. So William Bell was 80th. So he's a maybe for the third rounder. Beyond that, like
Ivan
maybe
Famine on the seventh round.
Yeah, Ivan Famine or LJ. Like it might be like LJ Mooney in the sixth, and take your pick of any number of guys in the seventh, and like the fifth round pick might be a Sean Barnhill, who I've really liked, or an Anthony Alain Samaké, who's been good as well. Quinn Beauchene. There are some interesting options, but none of those guys I think are going to be like world-ending talents at the NHL level. But I'm happy to be wrong. Just solid hockey players.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that the first pick this year might be a goalie. Like the dream of Eric Nilsson at 60 something is probably not going to happen. There was a brief moment where I thought maybe Cullen Potter, but it seems like more and more people are valuing him more and more, which, too bad, but I think a team's going to get a really good player there.
We'll see what happens on draft day, though. It'll probably be the Carolina Hurricanes just getting there right before you can.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's not impossible that the picks go something along the lines of like Andrianov, Sverchek, maybe Hillstrom,
mm-hmm.
and a couple of swings late. Like I don't know exactly, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting, and it's only January, but we'll see. So I guess on that note, that kind of covers it for Bob. We can flip over to Elite Prospects because they also have a list out. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of it because it's paywalled. Like, I'm not going to just like give away the whole thing. But in general, like they still have Roger McQueen really high. Like, obviously, they're not going to move him since he hasn't played. And again, like I haven't really moved him since he hasn't played. And so I'm really excited to see him again and see what he looks like coming back. They're big fans of Carter Bear and Cameron Schmidt. And I mean, we talked about Schmidt at length earlier. And I mean, I listened to their top 32 discussion video that they had, and I understand a lot of where they're coming from with Cameron Schmidt. I just think there's a lot more risk. And they were comparing him to guys like Cole Caulfield and and saying that there's more to him than Caulfield at the same age. And I don't think I agree with that, but I can kind of see where they're coming from, I guess. Like, he's more tenacious for sure and more aggressive and more of a psychological kid, but I don't know. Um, they're big fans of Cam Reed. They're not as big a fan of Anton Frundell as Bob McKenzie's is, and I feel like I come down somewhere in the middle on that. Um, but a lot of it lines up pretty close. I mean, they've got Christian Epperson really high, a re-entry into this year's draft, and I've seen Epperson a few times, and I think he'll get drafted, but I don't think I'd use a first round pick on him. But I see the appeal. Um, like I've seen Dave, they've got David Bedkowski ranked and Matthew Gard ranked and Jack Nesbitt and Will Horkoff and Daniel Swartzov and Peyton Kettles and Hayden Papanekis and all of these guys. Like, to me, they're the big boys, right? Will Bell, even in the late second round, like, they're all big boys that I think an NHL coach would put in a lineup, is at least at some point. Like, I tracked a game of Matthew Gard because when I watched him a little bit before today, I kind of thought there was something interesting there. A big, rangy, skatey boy center up the middle of the ice, but I didn't really think there was much there. Like, you're kind of developing a lot around the natural sort of skating profile, which, it's entirely possible that that works out. I again, in the second round, even, like, I always think back in the draft to, like, how many times guys that I have really high are available in the mid to late second round, right? Like Lane Hudson, for example, or as much as Gleb Trikozov has struggled in the AHL this season, whenever I've seen him there, I think he looks okay. It's just there's he's really young and there's going to take some time, but I can't lie, he hasn't produced, and it's kind of what he's supposed to be there for. But again, late second round pick, I'm absolutely doing that. So for me, you know, I look at that kind of caliber of player that I going into the draft see, and then on the other side of it, you could see these bigger, maybe sort of quote unquote safer guys. David Bedkowski, I've seen a bunch, and he's huge, and he can skate, and he's physical, which I guess is enough to make it work. But I feel like in the NHL, you still have to, like his play with the puck and moving the puck and all these things. It's not amazing from what I've seen, but I've been wrong before. Like, and like Luca Romano is in their second round, and I just did another game of Romano as well because I know they like him, and I want to love him. I really want to think that there's something there. I feel like he is a bit of a long shot, but one probably worth taking. But again, like with a second round pick, I don't think I would. Really, really smart though, and has a bit of quickness to him, but he gets rubbed out of the play a little bit. He's not that much of an effective scorer in the games I've seen. And I feel like you kind of have to be in order to be like him in the NHL. But we'll see. I don't really have too much to really like pick through here. A lot of it I generally see where they're coming from. Harry Nancy, an honorable mention, is a nice touch. Uh I mean, guys like Adam Banach and LJ Mooney, like, I get it. This season has not really gone their way. I still would probably take the swing on them at some point, you know? Like if you have a guy like Tyler Hopkins or Zach Moran or Maceo Phillips or Charlie Treadaway ranked, and Adam Banach and LJ Mooney and even a Harry Nancy or something not, I know which way I would go, but I guess there is some level of fairness in like making a more projectable, this guy is more likely to play in the NHL pick. But I personally don't see that as my sort of scouting philosophy. Um, and I guess the last one before we get into questions, I mean, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but Sportsnet also put out a list updated in January. So what do we have here? I mean, so again, I'm going to have to double check, but I believe that it is now unanimous amongst all the major outlets, including myself, that Matt Schaefer is number one, and Bob McKenzie, unanimous number one, was Matthew Schaefer. So that's kind of a reality that we're dealing with now. Um, Hagens and Martone at 2 and 3, Misa at 4, Desnoyers at 5. I mean, like, look, I've seen Desnoyers so much, and the blurb says by the time we get to the draft, he may very well end up being a top 3 pick. the idea that Caleb Dane-Wyatt, with all due respect, would be drafted higher or at the same slot as Ivan Demidov was last year, it just does not add up to me. Like like I think he's going to play. I think he's going to be an NHL player. I think he's a smart, capable 200-foot impact guy. But the names that also have gone that high in the draft in recent years, I just don't think they're in the same realm. But I mean, who am I to judge, right? Like maybe there's something I'm missing. But I watched him last night again with Sam, and when going ABing around, like he kind of fits in more for me with the back half of the first round, personally. Um,
Just
who else?
quickly,
Yes.
to clarify, this is Costantino's rankings, correct?
Yes, Sam.
Okay.
Yeah, Cosentino.
And
And it is free, so you can I'll paste it in the chat.
And you weren't watching these players with Sam Costantino, you were watching with Sam McGillicuddy.
Yes, correct. Samuel McGillicuddy.
And for those of you who don't know, we're calling Sam McGillicuddy because Tony Ferrari once did that on a Dauber draft cast.
And it will never ever get old.
Nope, it'll never get old.
Never ever get old. It was pretty cool to see Cosentino have so much faith in Milton Ystreen. But he writes similar in style and stature to Liam Ogren, and I don't agree with that. But I do think Ystreen is a very interesting player. He's just outside my first round, I think. I don't remember, but I guess I could look. But I really like him as an offensive guy, with a really, really smart playmaking brain. But I feel like the pace of his game and the intensity level off the puck is just not quite there. But then once in a while he turns it on, and you're like, oh, this guy rules. But it just kind of comes and goes. He is in my first round. But we'll see. I like him. So it's nice to see him get some attention. Other than that, I mean, like Lyndon Lakovich at 25, I think is a little bit tough for me. I think he brings so much to the game that you love to see, the size and the length and the skill level. You know, he's a great shooter, but he can make a play. Like as an offensive winger that has some length to him. You know, he mentions that if he can find consistency and effort and hard physical play, like I just don't think that's his game. Like, and I think that that's okay, right? I feel like just because he's 6'4", it doesn't mean that he's supposed to be a powerful guy. I think that he's much more of a finesse player. I think he's learning quite a lot about possession and how to work off of opponents and using his reach in the offensive zone to his advantage with the puck and without it. And the scoring ability is there. Like in Moose Jaw, they're not the best team right now. There's not a tremendous amount for him to work with, but like he's a guy over 40% involvement in his team's offense. And the only other guys in my tracker right now who are there are Michael Misa, Benjamin Kindle, and that's it. I mean, Matthew Schaefer himself is at 35% in the games he's played, which is outrageous for a defenseman. And Hagens is at 37, which is really good for a college player. But not many guys are as participatory in their team's offense as Lyndon Lakovich. So he may finish with a 68, 70-point season, but that's a really strong 70 points. And for me, I buy it. I buy into a lot of what he brings to the table, and he could very quickly be a guy who is pretty valuable past a certain point in the draft. But other than that, I mean, a lot of it, fair enough. You know, I went and watched the Will Horkoff game. I'm not exactly sure I mean, in his description, Sam Cosentino uses the word bloodlines, so put that on your bingo card. But I watched him with Michigan. I mean, he says it was the right decision, and I don't really see that. Like I see the physicality and, you know, the edges, and his ability to cover ice is pretty good, but I don't like settling pucks and carrying pucks and, you know, making plays under pressure. Like that was all a bit of an issue. And again, like there's a lot of faith on development, and I just don't know if I've seen like a first round caliber player out of him. Like I put him on my list, like as a second to third round swing that as of right now where I would maybe take him, but I don't know. Cause I also watched him at the NDDP and I didn't think he was amongst the best players on that team, right? Like better than even a Jack Murtagh, right? Like I'm not the biggest Jack Murtagh guy or a Will Moore guy, but I think those three players aren't really super comparable together as a group. But I don't know. It's hard to say. It's still only January, but I just haven't quite seen that. So yeah, especially in like Sacha Boumedienne, like one spot behind him, who I felt has been looked more comfortable in college hockey. But again, Horkoff has obviously not played nearly the same amount of games yet as Boumedienne. So we'll see. Okay, I mean, I guess that just about does it. Like overall, again, like I'm not going through these to like pick on people at all. It's more just to like see where other people are at
Mm-hmm.
and who to check back in on my end and sort of go, okay, like I see Jack Nesbitt in the first round a couple of times now, and I go, okay, well, maybe I should go back and look at him again. Or Brady Martin still in people's top 15, and I'm going, okay, I should go check it out. And I did a game of Brady Martin today, and I went, yep, I could see stuff that he brings to the table that NHL teams are going to want to use. And I just don't know at the NHL level what kind of effectiveness in terms of the overall impact on the game that he's going to bring. And for me, that devalues him a little bit. Like, again, I look for guys who, when they don't have the puck, they're really good at getting it back. They're really good at controlling it, keeping possession, moving it up the ice, and creating in the offensive zone, and doing so quickly and effectively, and pushing guys on their heels and constantly with really good pressure and really good pace in their game and all that stuff. And so when I have these bigger guys who are a little bit more passive and a little bit more, I guess you could say, tactical, and they rely on their reach and their size and sort of the game to come to them, that doesn't quite, gel with what I value, at least in the first round. But I mean, there's a lot of guys in this draft, though, where you could go, yeah, sure, but they are maybe third line complementary wingers, right? Like Brady Martin at the Prospects Challenge, I thought he played a really interesting role. You put him with two elite players, and he's the physical winger who gets in deep and battles and hits guys and, does the mucky stuff. And I think he does pretty good at that. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes it doesn't matter. These guys will get drafted before I would take it, and that's okay. And we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, too, for me, it only really matters when it's time for me to put my name next to someone. And a lot of these guys are going to be gone anyway, so I don't even get a shot. But that's where the fun begins for me, is like all the guys everybody wants are gone. So who's left over? Who are the guys that we can pick up and maybe look under different rocks and see what we can find? That's the fun thing to me.
So with that,
yes.
Why don't we look under the rock that is our chat and move on to that? But first,
good pivot. Yeah.
William, even though you have dropped from this call 7 times, it feels like, you are still obligated to do your ad read. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I have to do this.
The advertisers don't pay that much. Where I have a backup internet.
Well, you're one of the you're the main advertiser of your own show.
On my own show. That's true. Yeah. So that's free. So there you go. Anyway,
can't disappoint myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, you can.
please support myself. Yeah. Anyway, we're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our link in the description or in the chat, or you can use our link or this QR code in the video window, and you can give us a kickback on anything you buy in that store as well. We're brought to you by Puck Preps Hockey, where you can find all your NCAA, CHL prospect coverage. There's plenty going on over there. There's a little bit more and more momentum about OHL drafts and QMJHL drafts. Also, shout out to the Newfoundland Regiment, the brand new QMJHL team coming to Newfoundland. I'm really excited to see that happen. The Rock deserves hockey, and it's been sad since the Growlers left, and they deserve it, and I hope it works. So good for them. And the logo's cool. And of course, Scouching.ca, which is my own website. Obviously, you're watching the show, so you know what it is. But if you don't, you can go over there and get a subscription at multiple different tiers where you can gain access to all kinds of things like data tables for drafted and undrafted prospects, a Discord server that's really, really fun, and we're watching hockey in there together all the time, and all kinds of fun stuff. And plenty of other goodies that you can check out, including new visualization tools that have just been updated for all premium members and up. So that's something you can check out at Scouching.ca. So we're in the back half of the show.
Yes, we are.
Q&A.
I just would like to quickly follow up with you and make sure that has Buttery Spread gotten their free month yet?
I never heard from them, so I know they're here. I saw the username.
Yes.
either DM me on Blue Sky or Twitch or Twitter or X or whatever the heck we're calling it now, or send me an email. Actually, I don't know if my email is public anymore, but we'll figure something out. But yes, we do owe that person that.
Yep.
All right. So again, yeah, back half of the show is always a Q&A. So if you have any questions or any comments or any thoughts or, fighting 7-year-olds like we did on Monday night, have at her.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that until you mentioned it.
Yeah, that was a good one. I enjoyed that. Who would die first? And we both thought Sam. I mean,
yes,
probably. Okay. Okay. So the first question:
are those 7-year-olds coming to kill me? Ah, that's what happened.
Yeah. He would. Yeah. Oh, poor Sam.
We love you, Sam.
Love Sam. Yeah, we do.
Hopefully, he comes back someday. Now into the
He'll be back. He'll be back. Don't worry.
Good.
He's going to be back. Who do you see as the biggest boom bust swings outside the top 10? I mean, we talked about this a little bit. I think the easy answer is Cameron Schmidt. I would say, I think there are guys with real boom potential, and I don't know about bust potential, like Cullen Potter, who I really love. I think Ben Kindle is a bit of a boom bust guy. I love what he brings to the game. I think he has a mind for the game that is really unparalleled in this year's draft, especially outside of guys like Hagens and Schaefer and Misa. He doesn't have the physical tools really, but as a center and just how smart he is and how much he commands possession of the ice, like I love him so much in terms of how he plays, what he brings to the game and what he could bring to the game. He just needs to fill out a little more. I think a step of quickness would really do him some good from here, but man, he is so smart and reads play so well and moves the puck so well and makes everyone look better all the time. And it's really, really great. Boom bust. I mean,
well, didn't you mention Cam Schmidt earlier?
Yeah, Cam Schmidt is probably the easiest answer. Cole Reshny might be another one. I think there's huge upside, but some good downside there too.
And also outside the top 10, it's very wide range.
It is.
So you can just
very wide.
You can just throw a ton of names, like as much as I guess you could even throw in Ivan Famine.
I was just gonna say Ivan Famine, LJ Mooney.
Mm-hmm.
If someone takes LJ Mooney, you could either be getting nobody or the steal of the draft, because that guy, holy God, like honestly, if you have the capability, just go back and watch him at the U18s. He was playing with James Hagens. He was electric. He was a point a game, fast, aggressive, skilled guy. And I think this season has just been a season from HE double hockey sticks for him. So if he becomes a late round swing, at least for me, and you just sort of leave him in college for 4 years, I forget where he's going. Little John Mooney, where are you headed? He is going to the University of Minnesota. I could easily see that being a really fun place for him to go. Maybe not be a ton of production next year, but give him some time, and I think he could be something. Really fun player. But anyway, fantasy question for AJ.
I took care of this one.
Oh, you did? Okay.
While you were gone.
While I was broken?
Yep.
How do we feel about Matthew Coronato? Is he Italian enough? Well, you can answer that.
I like him.
Matthew Coronato Italian enough?
Of course he's Italian enough. He's Italian. Okay. That's all that matters, okay? I don't remember what Italian comedian said it, but it is very true. The dream of every Italian is to be Italian. And when you wake up in the morning, you go, oh, gosh, can't you believe it? I'm still Italian, Tony. And it's great. It's great.
Right.
But I don't know. I was never super enamored with Matt Coronato when I watched him in his draft year, but I know he's a good player. It's just I have a very specific eye for what I like, and it's guys who go, and he's not that. But it doesn't mean he's a bad hockey player. It's just he doesn't fall under the Adam Fantilli category for me, who was the first glitter player I ever had watching Matt Coronato game, because they both played on the Chicago Steel together, and I remember going, who that?
Well, they're both on pace to have the same seasons, so there's that.
And one of them is
to 50 points,
2 years younger.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, I is it 2? Yeah, 2. Mm-hmm. Really? No, wait.
Wouldn't it be?
Yeah, 2. Yeah,
Fantilli was two draft years, right? 2 draft years at least. But I know he's an older.
Birthdays.
Yeah,
I think. Now I don't remember. Fantilli was 2023, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because he was. Wait.
But he's also a November or an October birthday.
I guess I could just look it up here. Adam Fantilli.
But it was
yeah,
two
he's
draft
2004.
classes.
So he is okay. So he is 2 years younger. There you go. But yeah, so I mean, Coronado, I like Coronado. Like, I think he's a good sort of northbound, speedy NHL player. The skills there. I haven't really seen a ton of Calgary this year, but whenever I have, I think that Coronado's sort of the hands were always there, and sort of that straight line rush offense was always there. And I think that that's the nice part of his game. So I'll have to check him out with Calgary though, because I am very curious about him. I actually forgot he was playing so much. But he is playing some good minutes, in the high teens every night, and he's scoring at a decently consistent level.
And they're finding ways to win.
They're finding ways to win.
Dustin Wolf
certainly helps. Yeah, the person I disrespect the most in the NHL is Dustin Wolf somehow. But yes, that's the guy.
And Matvei Michkov.
Right, and Matvei Michkov. Yeah. No, it's definitely not the strongest rookie class in like a long time. Can't be that. No. Macklin Celebrini actually hasn't been very good, and nor has Lane Hudson for sure.
Yep, they both suck because you like them.
Yes.
That's how this works.
Rank these quote-unquote busts. Wright, Lafreniere, and Kakko. That's a tough one.
Wright is not a bust.
Well, no, he isn't. I mean, I think that's why the bust is in brackets there.
He's the best of all of them, hands down.
Shane Wright. I mean, yeah, so Shane Wright is, I think he's been having a pretty good year.
He's been good.
Yeah, he's on pace for 40 points. Which is an up. That's pretty good.
On Seattle too, and Seattle's a weird team. Like
yes.
I mentioned during the time you were away, while I was here filling for you, talking about dropping either Capo Caco or Jonathan Drouin.
Oh,
because Seattle's a weird team that moves players around, and you kind of don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
In terms of how they run lines all the time. One time I'll see Shane. Every time I go to Daily Faceoff and I check their page, Shane Wright's on a different line. He's on a different line.
Yeah.
He's on a different line. He's either centering the first, second, or third line. And what line is actually going to get the most playtime during the game? Who knows? Yeah. So I feel like that kind of hinders it a bit. Like, he's not going to always be the most productive player because of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think Shane Wright still has to figure out a way to score at even strength, but he isn't playing a tremendous amount of even strength either. Like, he's third line minutes, it looks like 12 to 16 minutes a night. Lafreniere is much higher, usually 15 to 20. So he's getting more looks, but at the end of the day, they're both on pace for similar-ish seasons. 40 points for Shane Wright, 50 points for Lafreniere. So they're kind of in the same realm, but Wright is also 2 years younger than Lafreniere. That's another thing to keep in mind too. Like, Shane Wright is only 21, right? Yep. Like, he just turned 21. So like, I think, again, like, this is a person who's been on the radar forever, and it feels like if he doesn't figure it out now, he's a bust. But I mean, he's having a pretty good year. Like, if this was his rookie season, which technically it is, it's pretty good for a guy who people have written off a little bit, especially for a guy who's been in the AHL for a season as well. But anyway, I don't know. I like Shane Wright when I watch Seattle. I think Capo Caco, who we haven't even spoken about, like, when we watched him with Seattle, I think he's just very effective at what he does. Yeah. Like, I think I would go, like, I mean, flip a coin, honestly, between Wright and Lafreniere. I think Wright has more upside as an NHL player based on what I've seen. Yeah. And he plays a more difficult position.
I would go Wright pretty confidently. I'd go Shane Wright over Alexi Lafreniere and Capo Caco, I would say.
Right. Like, I think Wright, Lafreniere, and then a bit of a gap, and then Caco. Like, and I like Caco. Like, I think as a bottom six energy guy, I think Caco could be something interesting for Seattle. Like, he's on pace for if he played the whole season for Seattle,
he's playing at the top, on the top line right now.
Yeah, he's on the top line, and I think he's on pace for, like, if he played with Seattle the whole year, like a 60-point season or something. He's almost a point a game with Seattle. That's crazy. So yeah, he might be on pace for a 50-point season, just like Lafreniere. So, I I mean, we kind of said this when he got traded, but it was like, I mean, that's maybe not the guy I would have moved if I was
Yep.
New York. But anyway,
I think it would be interesting to revisit this question at the end of the year and see what our thoughts are
yeah,
and see how much it
I agree.
changes. But I still think Shane Wright's going to be my number one guy, and it's more about, for me, because Lafreniere's had a bit of a down year compared to last season. I want to see where him and Kako are in relation at the end of the year.
Yeah, and Wright's 2 years younger than both of the other guys.
Yep.
So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yep.
Where in the draft would you take Christian Epperson? I mean, I'm not sure where he'd be near the top of my list of guys, but like 4th or 5th round, you know, I get some guys that I'm really excited about in the 1st or 2nd round. You know, there's usually, like, the thing is for me is like there's usually players that I have ranked like in the 30 to 40 range, 30 to 50 range, like in the 6th or 7th round. So it's hard for me to say, well, I would go for Epperson in position X, because like I don't have Epperson ranked right now, but I like him, but I think that it's a little bit hasty to like have him super high. So for me, I would maybe consider him as a mid-round guy, because usually for me in the 1st, 2nd, and even 3rd rounds, like there's usually guys that I really like that are still available almost universally. So it's worth taking a swing on those guys, and then maybe an Epperson pops up on the list a little later. Um, how did the Blackhawks talk themselves out of Matthew Schaefer?
They don't.
I mean, they don't. I don't think they do. Well, I mean, I don't know. They talked themselves out of Ivan Demidov. So
our game tape episode airs, and they see him say that he's the best player in this draft, and they're like, "Oh, he's too cocky for us."
yeah, maybe. And I mean, I don't know how much this matters, but James Hagens being an American guy and, you know, the NTDP gem, maybe that factors in, but I don't know how you say no to Matthew Schaefer, man. I mean, I love Misa and Hagens, but I mean, I'm excited to see Schaefer come back, because I want to know if we just saw the best month of his life or if he's actually that good. And I want to think it's the latter.
But they
And Michael Misa's also great.
But they also may not have the chance to talk themselves out of it. So
Right.
we'll see, because at this rate, he's going to be the first overall pick. And yes, Chicago should be in the lottery to get that pick. They should have quite the chance, but it doesn't mean they will get the chance.
They are currently second. So they are currently second in the lottery odds right now, behind San Jose. So we'll see where that goes.
So they'll win it.
Maybe.
Okay, so they'll win it.
They have a 13.5% chance if the lottery were held tomorrow. So a 90 or an 87% ish chance that they're not going to win the lottery and they're going to end up at 3 or 4 or something. So we'll see. I can see why Jackson Smith is playing cowboy hockey. Yeah, that's what he does. I mean, you got to take the good with the bad with Jackson Smith, but I love that guy. I think he's so much fun. Again, similar to like Simon Wang, where you watch him and you're like, well, there aren't that many guys that size and can skate like that. With Jackson Smith, it's like, well, there's not that many guys that big who can skate like that, who have skill like that, who can hit like that and cover ice like that. But he's a bit of a wild animal. And I think that, you know, figuring that out is going to be interesting to see how that goes. But boy, the right team with that guy will have an exciting hockey player, because, you know, some nights you might want to just, you know, rip his head off, or at least some moments. But I think a lot more of the time you're going to go, I am glad we have this guy on our team in a lot of ways.
So does it sound like a Nashville thing to you then? Because
that would be fun.
Because think about what Roman Josi does. And I'm not saying that this player is Roman Josi, but Roman Josi is the Nashville Predators offense as a defenseman. He is the guy carrying the puck. He goes for a skate, carries the puck in, and gets past the offensive zone blue line, and then makes the pass. That is what Roman Josi do. So could that be the role for Jackson Smith down the line if Nashville is the team to pick him?
Right. I mean, I don't know if they're like similar players, but I do think that he's going to be one of those guys where you're going to love him and then sometimes you're not. And I think that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you still bet on the tippy top upside, especially with the type of tippy top stuff you see with him, with the size and the skating level and the physicality and all these things. It's just going to, he's going to need some coaching. He's going to need some, pats on the back and some help. But I would say as long as it's all constructive, I think you could end up with a really, really good player. Is it just skating issues why Vinsagi dropped so much from being a first round or honorable mention in McKenzie's first ranking to being a second rounder? I don't know. I mean, I think with Vinsagi, I have him in my late first round. And I think that again, Sam and I watched a game of him last night, and he was not amazing, but he was certainly like one of the more physically engaged guys out there. Like he's big, but he's not the most beautiful skater if he's skating from blue line to blue line, right? But he does have a lot of momentum. He does have a lot of weight on his frame, and he can shift his body weight really well and cover ice pretty well. And I think that the skill level is a little inconsistent. Like sometimes you see some really high end stuff out of him on the rush, especially, but settling pucks and just sort of staying sort of calm and settling play and getting play moving with possession of the puck is a little bit of a challenge from what I've seen of him. But from where he was at the beginning of the year, I think he's come a long way. I think he's been really, really good. And so we'll see what happens. But if he's a guy that goes on the second round, like I now have him on the short list for round 2 because there's a possibility, but I don't know if I buy that NHL teams are going to let a guy like Vinsagi slip to almost the third round. But we'll see. I don't know. Why do you think Donnie Bracco was left off Central Scouting's list? Wheeler had him in the first round earlier in the year. Because I don't think Donnie Bracco projects very well to the NHL. Like most of those NTDP defenders, I just haven't really thought that much of, like top to bottom. I don't have any of them ranked. Asher Barnett is kind of interesting, but I feel like he's a really good college defenseman. Carter Amico, there's a lot of talk about him, but he's not my type of defenseman from what I've seen of him. Maceo Phillips, I have not liked really that much. But yeah, Bracco, I mean, he's got some flashy moments. I think there's skill there, but yeah, I don't really see it with him. I mean, maybe completely off of Central Scouting's list is a little bit questionable, but I'm not that cut up about it. Mertka's the best rush defender in the class. I mean, you're probably not completely incorrect on that. I would say Blake Fiddler's pretty good at it too. Mertka, though, is up there. Honestly, Skvortsov is pretty good at it as well. Yeah, those guys are also pretty good at it. But yeah, he's right up there.
Oh, look, Tyler Myers in the comments.
Yeah, we got Tyler Myers.
Definitely the real Tyler.
I mean,
Tyler Myers.
Yeah,
you better watch
time
out
on his hands.
You better.
He's got time. Well, I didn't wear my cage today.
No.
Gotta protect
Tyler Myers better watch out because the biggest Evan Bouchard stan is in the chat, and I just saw a message. So you might get a.
Ryan's not that scary. Anyway, I think Mertka's going to go 8-12 simply because he's got size and is a strong rush defender, and he's a right-handed defenseman. That sounds like something Tyler Myers would say, honestly. So maybe we're talking with the real guy. I mean, he is suspended right now, so maybe he's got some time on his hands. But if it is him, welcome to the show. Big fan. You're cool. But anyway, I do agree though. I think he is going to go pretty high because he brings a lot that NHL teams really like. But I don't think he projects as well as his point production with Seattle would indicate. It's offensively, that is. But I do think he's going to be a really good sort of 200-foot impact guy. This might be a broad question, but who do you think could be in the second round? Well, there's going to be a lot of players in the second round. But I mean, guys who might slip out of the first round. I mean, I'd say Cam Schmidt. Schmidt probably gets there. Bill Zonin might. And I think that Reshny probably. Adam Banak. Who else here? Like
who's small? That's the real question.
Generally, that is what it is, right? Like a lot of the time. I mean, the North Americans are probably going to dominate the first round. I know who I would target outside of the first round, but like the guys that slip out of the first round, to me, I think are Reshny, Schmidt, maybe Zonin. Yeah, like guys that people have ranked high. Maybe Cameron Reed, maybe.
Would your boy Ben Kindle maybe fall out based on where he is in the McKenzie rankings? Because that's what I'm going off.
Maybe.
To an extent.
Maybe. maybe. But what maybe. Can you compare Bill Zonin and Caleb Desnoyers? Yeah, I mean, so I watched Bill Zonin yesterday morning, and I watched Caleb Desnoyers with Sam at night, and I will say this: like, I think Caleb Desnoyers is a smarter 200-foot guy. Like the awareness on the ice, I think is might have seen earlier in the show. And I have Zonin one slot higher because I mean Zonin has been playing center every game I've seen, just like Desnoyers. And someone also asked the question, is whose skating stride is choppier than my internet? And I would say Bill Zonin is pretty close to that. Like watching him skate in a straight line and chase down loose pucks and everything, it's a little bit questionable, and he might need some refinement there. But I still look at him and I go, I don't really care that much because of how hard he works and how much there is in terms of like the skill level he has is also pretty good. His physicality is pretty good as well. Like I like how physical he is. I guess part of it is like if one is ranked 29th in North America and the other is ranked 7th in North America, I don't think it's that much of a downgrade to look at a Bill Zonin. He's I think he's bigger. I think he is I think he's more aggressive and more a more impressive player in pursuit of opposing players. I think he thinks quicker as well. Like when he receives the puck, he might be one of the better players in the draft at just spotting an option and hitting them with a pass. Like he's one of the cleanest passers in the queue of the data set that I have. Like he just seems to get it. And he's got a pretty good shot, you know. I mean, Dane Wyatt does too, but those two guys, they're on pace for similar production this year. Obviously, Dane Wyatt is on a better team and producing better at even strength, but I still think that Zonin is a really talented player who needs some refinement over time, but there's a lot to like there. I think with him. Uh, mm, 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 mm. Oh, that was literally the next question. Which prospect is choppier skating stride? Yeah. What is Harry Nancy's potential role in the NHL? Well, I mean, I'd say third line, 200-foot guy. I want to see him on a different team. Um, like the games that I do of him, it's very Brad Lambert like, where it's like, yeah, you could look at him and there's no points, but you also look at him and go, when the team takes shots, he's the one either taking them or creating them. Generally, a lot more than his line mates. He is, I think, really smart. I think he sees the ice really well. He's got a good skating stride. I think he covers ice really well. Especially for a guy ranked 116th in North America. I think that's criminally low for him. I think he's got a ton of upside. He's really young. And I think you could really just develop him from here really well. He's got skill, he's got vision, he's got physicality, he's got awareness of the ice. He again similar to Bill Zonin, like he spots options quickly, executes on options quickly, and just does a really good job facilitating play around the ice. I like watching him, and I feel like he could be a guy for team scouting in the mid rounds if he's 116th in North America. Like I could easily see that being a guy that I add. What's the easiest and hardest attributes to project from a draftee to an NHLer? It's a really good question. Um, I think it's really hard to project how well a player will handle physicality in the NHL because so much of it comes down to can you put weight on? Can you put muscle on? And can you put muscle on without losing your quickness? Can you stay at a high pace of play with an extra 15 pounds on you? And can you resist NHL pressure? I think that's really hard to tell with a 17-year-old. For me, though, I think one of the easier things is when you recognize a player who makes decisions and executes quickly. Because no matter what level of hockey they play at, that is something that always will translate. Like the time it takes for you to receive a pass, find an option, and do something with it, if you can do that quickly, that will work at every level, right? So when you see guys who do that, and you see guys who also can like think about multiple options. So for example, like a big reason I love Berkeley Catton so much is that he's a guy who he can look like he's trying one thing and in a lightning bolt do something completely different or hit you with a pass target that you didn't really pay much attention to or think about. Like he just has that awareness and that intelligence to sort of go, oh, I'm going to do this instead, right? And I think guys like that are really, really important. So for me, that's why I like guys like Ben Kindle a lot and Cullen Potter a lot. And, you know, I think those guys bring that kind of a mentality to the game. Eric Nilsson as well, to a certain extent. So I think those guys are what makes it really easy for me to go, you know what, they have that trait. You can work with that no matter what. But in terms of the hard thing, it's like they can do that all day, but what happens when they've got Alex Tuck bearing down on them on a forecheck, right? Like, how do they handle that? And that's really hard to tell because there's not very many players and there's not many situations like that. It's why I value European pro hockey a lot, because those guys, again, like, I think there's a psychological difference between junior hockey players developing and working their way up the ladder and 30-year-old men who are playing for their paychecks. You know, like, that's a big psychological difference in terms of competition. And so how you deal with that, you get that experience at 16, 17, 18 years old if you're European. I think that's really valuable. And so that's why I like looking at a guy like Gustav Hillstrom, seeing him at that level and going, he seems comfortable here. Same with Sverchek. They seem comfortable. They're moving play in the right direction. They get hit. They get right back up. They figure it out. They can make plays under pressure. There's a lot to like. It's just really hard to project with junior age players playing in junior leagues right now. We covered Simon Wang earlier. How do you project Ethan Bear? I think you mean Carter Bear. Yeah, Carter Bear. I mean, I love Carter Bear, man. I think he is just the bee's knees. I think he's got so much potential. Um, Again, I mentioned this a while ago, but like, I think he brings things to the game that people are looking for Porter Martone to bring a little more of. But I don't think the skill level and the vision and the awareness on the ice is the same as Martone. So they're in the same tier for me, but I'd rather have Martone. But Bear is not far behind for me. I mean, he's on pace to have just as productive a season. You know, being on Everett and being involved in 38% of their offense is outrageously good. So I think Bear is a really I think he projects really well to the NHL. He is physical, he is intense, he is skilled, he's got a really good shot. I've been a huge fan of him going back to last year. Like, he's a guy who I watched, went, I haven't heard much about this guy, but I'm going to plop him in at 12 and see how it goes. And I haven't looked back since. I love him. I think he projects really well, and whoever drafts him, I think, is getting a really, really impressive player that plays that playoff hockey, I think, that everyone is looking for. So it surprises me that he's that low on people's lists, but I like him a lot.
And he wants to get faster and more physical and more intense.
So
his words. Also, there's a little thing that came in about, does he answer questions about prospects? If you mean like drafted prospects, yes. This show covers all bases. You can even ask us some NHL questions, some NHL fantasy questions. More than welcome to ask away. And other things too.
Literature. No, please don't do that.
We got asked about being chased by 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
So it's free reign for the most part.
Yeah.
Just behave yourself. Don't be naughty.
Be naughty.
No.
Okay. I love Ethan Bear, but Ryan Leonard projects a little bit better. I mean, we'll see. I love Ryan Leonard. I mean, there is a bit of Ethan, I get it. Never mind. It's a joke. Okay. AJ, what? Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. For the bottom 5 or 6 teams, which players do you feel best fit the needs of each team when considering their pools? That's a good question. And I think it's more reasonable than like, my team is picking 4th. Who should I draft? So like, I'm just going to run. Okay. Bottom 5 are Anaheim, Nashville, Buffalo, Chicago, San Jose. So if I'm Anaheim and I can get like a Porter Martone or a Jackson Smith, I think I'm thrilled. And I think that would be I think Jackson Smith would make a great Anaheim Duck, even though they have a lot of young defensemen. Porter Martone, I think, would be a huge addition to them as well. So one of those two guys for sure.
They're taking
Nashville.
Porter.
Sorry?
If they could take Porter Martone, they take him first overall. That's the way the Anaheim Ducks think.
I could see that. Nashville, I mean, I'm assuming they're not going to get a look at Hagens or Misa. I mean, Nashville with Victor Eklund would be gross. Like, based on who they've drafted, you know, they have guys like Igor Surin, Teddy Stiga,
But
I'm
they
trying to
could
think of other
really
ones.
but they could really
Like,
use a center. Like if we
They
have
could.
let's take position out of the equation. Let's just use the bottom 6 or bottom 5 teams and just assign guys based on what they need the most.
Yep.
And
Oh,
in that case, it's one of Misa or Hagen's is what I would imagine for Nashville because they are in
what,
need of a
4?
center.
Like at 4?
No,
I
no,
don't
we're
think either of
we're
those
taking
guys.
we're gonna take we're
Oh,
gonna
I
take
see.
draft
I see what
position
you're
out.
saying.
We're gonna
Yeah,
take
yeah,
draft
yeah.
position out
Okay.
of the equation.
Yeah.
We're just
One of
gonna
those two.
yeah for
Yeah.
them.
For Buffalo, I mean Schaefer. I think Schaefer's a guy Buffalo could really use.
But they have defensemen.
But they don't have enough.
But
like the scoring isn't their problem. Like if you look at
but
it,
they
like they're
don't.
not.
I feel like they're really lacking a center. Like that's the big thing that
Yes.
they're in need of, which I feel like is the answer to a lot of these teams. They all need a
Yeah.
center,
Yeah.
right? So
I mean, San Jose with Schaefer would be quite the
yes,
addition.
I feel like that's the right answer for them.
Yeah. And Chicago then getting
Martone
Misa or
even.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
If you want to count Oliver Moore as a center,
Right.
then I think Martone makes sense. Maybe Eklund.
Yeah. I don't think you can bet on Moore being a center, but maybe, or at least a top 6 center. But I think Chicago. Yeah, I don't know. I really have a hard time picking out what Chicago wants. In
They
a
could
player.
use a Matthew Schaefer though.
They could use a Matthew Schaefer quite a lot. They certainly
all these
could.
teams could use all of these players right now, and that is
because they're really good players. They're all really good.
Yep.
They're all really good. Okay. Love the video rooms. Thank you very much. Very informative on how you look at the game. Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah. So if you haven't checked them out, we've done a lot of video rooms lately. There's going to be more coming.
Mhm.
We just did one on Consta Hellenius. We've done them on Ryan Leonard, Gabe Perreault,
Zane
who else has been-
Perek,
yeah, Zane Perek,
Berkeley
and
Catton,
Zeev
Zeev
Buium, and
Buium,
Carter Yakimchuk. So you can check them out. There's a
Easton
playlist on the channel.
Cowan. If you're by chance a Leafs fan, but nobody here other than me is a Leaf fan,
Right.
it feels like. Oh, and Brian Stewart also.
Right, and Brian Stewart. I kind of get a Danford vibe from Bitkowski. I feel like Danford has a better set of feet in a straight line and a bit more skill. But I think Bitkowski is more like of a violent player rather than Danford's more sort of physical, tactical, defensive play. Like Danford, to me, I just see a rock solid, smart defensive player. Bitkowski, I think, is a bit more of a forceful, intense defender. But I need to go back and watch more Bitkowski because I've seen him ranked a few times and I've watched him a few times, and it might just be one where I can't really square that circle. The Habs picked twice in the middle of the first round. Can you identify 2 forwards that would fit the Habs' needs? Bear and O'Brien, maybe. I mean, if you can get Carter Bear and Cullen Potter, I think you're laughing.
Or
I
Lyndon
think that
Lakovic,
would be,
right?
yeah, Lyndon Lakovic too, but I would take Potter and Bear over like a Bear and Lakovic.
Okay.
Especially because Potter's been playing center all year. Both Bear and
Fair enough.
Lakovic haven't really been playing center. Like the idea of Cullen Potter and Carter Bear on the same team is silly to me. And I feel like with Calgary's pick, if you get Potter, and with Bear or with your own pick, you take Bear or something if he's there. Yeah, I think you're having a good time. I like O'Brien though. Like if it's O'Brien, fair enough. I think he's also quite good. Do you think Eklund has a fairly solid ceiling offensively? Yeah, I think so. I think it's good. Like I think I actually have a game of his to track that I haven't watched yet, so I'll have to get to that. But I mean, I think his overall impact on the game is going to be very, very positive. But I think he's a shot first guy, but the playmaking is also still kind of there. Like Eklund brings a lot to the game, really, really, really well. I think that his offense is going to be a lot more grinded out along the boards and find a way to toss a puck in front of the net and someone finishes for him, or go to the net and just get a shot on net and, or on the rush, like he can just wind up a shot and rifle it, which is pretty good. But I think his best traits are just the overall impact he has on the game, and his play in transition is also really good. How did the year off affect Shane Wright's development? I don't really know. And I think that I think that it's also like talk like that can be applied very conveniently to suit whatever it is you're trying to say, right? Like I don't mean you, but I mean like in general, right?
I know this
Like
person. This person.
like you do.
Yeah. This is one of my buddies.
Oh,
He
okay.
dropped in a question because he's like, I want to support you.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Zane. We
Yes.
appreciate you.
Is it Zane Perek?
No, it is not Zane Perek.
Oh, that's too bad. But yeah, I mean, so with Wright, I think it's like in that draft class, a lot of guys had time off, like they did not play. And so it's like, well, you could look at all those guys, and I'm sure some of them are doing better and some of them aren't. And when I think about Shane Wright, number one, I mean, my gut said put him at 2 that year, but Cooley at 1. And I think that should have been something I did.
But you didn't listen to it.
But I didn't listen.
Yep.
I didn't listen to my gut.
You coward.
But it's not because I didn't think Wright was very good, right? Like I just thought he needed time to develop, right? He was not the highest pace guy. He was not a reliable enough offensive player at 5-on-5 for me to put him as an elite level player. And I just don't know. I didn't know how his game would project, but the smarts were so good. Like he's so smart and covers ice so well, that it's really hard. Like in a way, I feel like Michael Misa is a lot more of what people thought Shane Wright was at the time, and Shane Wright has become a little bit more like Michael Misa now. In a way, if you watch him play, like the way he gets around the ice and the way he anticipates play and moves the puck and does all that stuff, it's all really, really good now. So for me, I think with Wright, the time off is the time off. It was a chaotic time anyway, but I think he did have more development needed, I think, than a lot of people let on at the time of the draft. And I think that is probably a big reason why he fell all the way, quote unquote, to 4.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think about Cameron Reed? I like him. I know Elite Prospects has him at 11, which I think is a little high. Like I have him at 18. And I think that he is a guy who is one of the better straight line skating offensive defensemen in the draft. Like he gets on his horse and he can get up the ice really, really well. He's pretty mobile. I think his play in the D zone is still a work in progress. Like he gets beat on the rush a little bit. He is a little bit short in terms of reach, and using it effectively and being a little more aggressive in transition defensively would be good for him. But I think in general, he's a really, really talented player. Like the guy he kind of reminds me of a little bit is like a bit of a smaller Thomas Harley. Like how he just can get on a horse and gallop up the ice and quarterback a rush and play offensively and jump into the offense and not be that out of place defensively enough where it's not worth it. So I think Cam Reed's a good player. I think he brings a lot of good stuff to the game, especially skating wise and how he uses it. But I don't know where he's going to go, right? Like some have him really high and Central Scouting doesn't, but he doesn't play that safe, sort of dependable big boy, the style of hockey that Central Scouting often looks for. Who's your top 5 for best names in the draft class?
Shane Van Sagie's got to be up there. That's a cool name.
Shane Van Sagie is a good one. Yes.
Let's go to one of the lists.
Dakota Rayon Mullen. Dakota.
That's cool.
Rayon Mullen. Yes.
No, that's a cool one. Is what I'm saying.
Oh.
Looking through these. Maybe I just have him on the brain because I'm editing the game tape of him, but Kashawn Aitchison's a cool name.
It is. Yeah, it is.
I'm biased towards Italian sounding names, so Porter Martone is also one for me. Carter Bear's a cool name.
Little John Mooney.
Oh yes, that's the one. That's the number one.
Little John Mooney.
But a lot of these guys have cool sounding names. It's just hard to
Lyndon Lakovich.
Yes.
That's a great name.
That's a great name.
Like Lyndon Lakovich is like a race car driver's name, I'm an F1. I'm an F1 driver, Lyndon Lakovich. Yeah, I don't know. I also love
Bill Zonin. Bill Zonin.
Bill Zonin.
And Ratty Murk is also a good one.
I do like Roddy Murtka because if I asked a 7-year-old to draw a picture of someone named Roddy Murtka, they might draw someone like Roddy Murtka.
Yeah,
6'6", shoulders out, maybe. probably.
It just gives you big vibes, you know? Like that's his name gives you I'm huge.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of height, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of height.
Yeah. Will Luka Radovojevich be in the first round? No. Ben Kindle, 4 points last night. Good boy. Good boy. Does Carter Bear project as a center? I think he could. I think it's possible. I think he's been playing there a little bit this season. But I don't know. I would try him there. I think he's got the skating ability and the range and the physicality to do it. So I'd try it. But I think if he ends up a winger, it's not a problem at all. I think he would be great at that too.
From what I've seen limited wise of him, he just strikes me as a fantastic F1. Just a guy who's going to go in there and forecheck the hell out of teams. So I don't know, like, generally speaking, your center is your F3.
Yeah,
and
generally, yeah.
I feel like he fulfills a role that is really, really awesome as a winger in a defensive sense, too, where he's just going to be a pain in the ass to deal with. So
yes, I agree.
I think it's just fine if he's a winger and plays that awesome, tenacious F1 role.
Yeah. Thanks for answering the question. You're welcome, Jay Son. What would you say are the weaknesses of Schaefer's and Misa's games? Both seem very well rounded. Okay, so Schaefer, I think the only thing, if I were coaching him, the only thing I would really sort of try to monitor a little bit is he does jump into offensive rushes quickly. Like there's been a few times where if you think about it like soccer, where the back line can sometimes like jump to put someone offside a little bit. He kind of does that, but in hockey, you don't want to be doing that. So it's like he'll see the puck sort of moving northbound and he'll be sort of gone. And it doesn't happen very often, but that's literally in my notes and in my data and stuff. Like when he gets burned, that's the only time I've seen him really get burned. With Misa, I don't know. I don't really have a good answer. Like he's not the most physical guy in the world, but he doesn't have to be. Like he just does, it's just not his game. So I don't really know the answer to that. There isn't really a weakness. I would say, like, in terms of if you park him on the faceoff circle, is he going to score like Alex Ovechkin? I don't think so. But he is like a guy who can score in 15 different ways. So is that a weakness? Like, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter. So he's one where it's really tricky for me to really pick through and find a weakness.
Is he good at faceoffs? Because he is a center.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I don't track face-off data, so I don't know.
Well, then you're a bad analyst if you don't track face-off data. What are you doing, Will?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Face-offs.
Because that might be your out. That's all I can think of.
He's 6th in face-off wins in 32 games, so that was as of January 2nd.
So he's good at face-off.
He's fine. He's more than fine. Do you have any thoughts on Yegor Sidorov? He's producing decently in AHL, but I can't find out if his offense is translatable. I mean, I always felt Sidorov was a guy who could score, but I don't think it was going to be in the NHL. Like he's a really good shooter, really good skill in the offensive zone, but he's a guy who I've always felt kind of has to have the puck given to him in the offensive zone to produce. And I feel like in the NHL, that's really hard to do and make it work. I think the bar for him is going to be pretty high, and I don't know if he's going to get there, but a good AHL guy, and maybe he goes back to Russia and has a really good career or something. I could see that. Actually, is he Russian? I think he's Russian. Doesn't really, I mean, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but yes. Oh, he's Belarusian. Okay. So maybe, but still, regardless, maybe he goes back and does really well over there too. But he's good. Like he's a good player. I like him. But I agree. I think the translatability of his game is a little bit of a question mark. I know the Flames draft picks are up in the air, but they likely will have 2 selections between 22 and 32. Who would you draft in their positions? If I'm Calgary, based on the draft they had last year, I mean, the idea of like adding well, actually, he probably won't be there. I was going to say Ritti Murka, but like Blake Fiddler maybe in that range would make a lot of sense.
Braden Coots, maybe?
Braden Coots in Calgary would be sick.
Ben Kindle, who already plays.
Ben Kindle in Calgary with guys that they've drafted like Andrew Basha, Luke Misa. I think he would do a really good job with those guys. And I know they're all small. Yeah, they're small guys, but I don't know. I think those guys are pretty tenacious and pretty aggressive, and I think they could be good. If Lakovic is there, maybe him, but I feel like Calgary could use some centers.
So Braden
even though you don't draft on
Coots.
need. Sorry.
So Braden Coots.
Yeah, Braden Coots. Yeah, like if it's Coots and Fiddler, I
And
think
he's
you're doing
big
okay.
according to this to his listing here.
Coots?
Yeah, it has him at 6'3", 201 here. Did they mess it up again?
He's 6 feet, 185.
Oh,
on
okay,
Elite
nice.
Prospects. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Didn't they mess that up for Craig Button's list too?
Yep.
It's okay. I'm not gonna get mad because I definitely messed something up with the draft ranking thing earlier today.
It's okay. We all mess up.
May or may not have listed a position for Ben Cavan.
It's okay. Do you think Etienne Morin is going to make the NHL in some capacity? I don't think so. I was never a huge Morin fan in his draft year. I just think that he's just, I feel like his game doesn't really translate super well. He's a bit of a lower pace guy, really pushes offense as much as he can a lot of the time, and is a volume shooter that I think, it's a bit of an issue. Like, I also feel like on a team as good as how Moncton has been this year, being less productive than he was in his draft year is a bit of a, not that points matter that much, but it is something to note. I don't know. I think he's hard to project to the NHL. I probably wouldn't have picked him in the second round. But you never know. He'll probably be in the AHL for a while, though. I can say that. Which team's draft strategy do you disagree with the most?
Might be your team, Ducks for Cup.
Yeah, maybe Anaheim.
Sorry,
but
dude.
They have added some guys that are like Minchikov and
Zellweger.
Like, they do add some fun guys that, but like Utah maybe is a team that I disagree with a lot. I mean, Aginlo was a really good pick and right up their alley, but in general, Utah, I feel like, is a bit of a question mark. Trying to think of other ones.
It's funny because I disagree with the Leafs draft strategy, but they end up finding players that fit for them. And
there's logic to what they do, I think.
There is.
I mean, Boston. Boston, I just disagree. Boston and Ottawa too. I just don't see what they
I can't say Boston entirely because I'm. There's a certain player that holds a very special place in my heart, but the rest of it I don't agree with.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I got to bang through the rest of these here. Arvidrada is an awesome name. I agree. Who would you say is the best shutdown defenseman in the draft? Shutdown? I mean, at his best, I'd say Jackson Smith. Maybe Blake Fiddler. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
There is also a James Bond. That's true. There is a James Bond in this draft. I don't know if he'll get drafted, but James Bond.
Will, the next question about God King Idar. Our boy.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this will be the last question of the day. What do you think the ceiling is for Idar Suniev, God King? I believe top 10 in NCAA scoring this year, or top 15. I mean, I love Idar Suniev. We always have. We've been big fans of him for a long time.
All hail the God King Idar Suniev.
All hail God King Idar. Lisan Al-Gaib himself.
His name's really cool, and that's why I dubbed him God King Idar Suniev. Yeah. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, we throw ourselves at the altar of a God King Idar. Really, really skilled, really fun player to watch. Pretty good playmaker as well for a guy who doesn't have that many assists relative to goals. Like, he's a 1-to-1 ratio, but I love that he's at UMass. I thought that was a really good fit for him, and he's coming along really well. Like, I really, really like him. I think he's a good player. And should be, I wouldn't pull him out of college right now, but after another season or two, yeah, I think all bets are off. Okay, on that note, I have to get out of here. I apologize again for the issues we had earlier in the show, but regardless, we still had fun. It was a good time. Got through some good stuff. Thank you very much for joining me. Again, we're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use the link in the description box or in the chat, or scan the QR code in the video window to give us a kickback on anything you buy in the store. We're also brought to you by Puck Preps Hockey, where you can get all your CHL prospects and NCAA stuff going on. There's lots and lots of commitments flying around, so it's a good place to stay on top of that. And of course, we're brought to you by Scouching, where you can check out scouching.ca and get access to a Discord server that's really, really fun, as well as plenty of other cool stuff like data tables for drafted and undrafted prospects, and plenty of other cool goodies that have just been updated actually over there. So you can check that out
Right
over
on.
at scouching.ca. So thank you very much for joining us. Luckily, the internet sorted itself out after I booted it again.
It did.
And we had a good show. So, AJ, thank you again. And we'll see you Monday night, 8 p.m. It's going to be a good time.
And go Leafs, go. Good afternoon, everybody.